Hey guys, I'm Arek from Areknawo.com and today we'll be making this little button right here with a ripple effect known from Google's material design. We'll be using nothing else other than pure JavaScript, CSS and HTML, so no library or framework is required. Starting with the HTML file, we'll set up the basics and, most importantly, our button with some inner text and a class name assigned to it. But as the button doesn't look too good, we have to make it prettier. So let's also link the CSS and an optional font from Google Fonts called Around. Now let's jump into our CSS file and inside the body selector set our font family and font size. The reason for the font size is that we'll be using relative CSS units later on, so let's just set it to 8 pixels. Now we'll target our btn class and set its font size, margin and padding to 3, 1 and 1 rem respectively. I'd also prefer for our button to have a better looking color design, so let's play with the background image, color and box shadow values. You can see mine on the screen, but if you prefer something different, I recommend you check out websites like CSSmatic or webgradients.com, links in the description. We also want to remove the ugly outline, so let's set outline 0, border none and border radius to 3 rem to make our button rounder. So now that we have a solid foundation for our work, we can start making the actual ripple effect. First, what we need to do is to create an HTML element for our ripple. Let's get back to the HTML file and do just that. We'll place it within the button tag just after the text. We'll also add a class name to it to use some CSS. Also, don't forget about our JavaScript file as we'll need it later on. So let's get back to the CSS file, select our ripple and set its position to absolute. We also have to set position relative on the button itself. Now to see the ripple, we set background color together with height and width. Here we have to use pixel units as it will allow us to easily interact with it from the JavaScript side. For more advanced use cases, you should probably set the size of the ripple by calculating it with JS, but here, for sake of simplicity, we'll hardcode it to 400. Just know that it needs to be big enough so that when the user clicks on the far edge of the button, the ripple starting from there should cover the entire surface. Now we're starting to see something, but we still have to make a few adjustments. Let's set the ripple's border radius to 100% for it to be a circle and the opacity to about 0.6 for a nicer look. Now we'll turn to the button itself and use some flexbox to center our ripple. So display flex, align items center and justify content center, finishing with overflow hidden to trim the ripple. Alright, now we have to write some JavaScript. So let's get into the JS file and first access the button and the ripple. We'll do it with a simple query selector as we only got one button to handle. Then we'll create two functions, say pointer down and pointer up, to properly handle our events. Here we could use the real pointer events, but as they are a somewhat new feature and are supported in some browsers, we'll be using the usual mouse and touch events instead. So let's start with the pointer down. This function will be used by the mouse down and touch start events, so let's indicate it here. And now inside the function we need to first position and then animate the ripple. To do this we have to calculate the proper coordinates. We already have access to client X and client Y, but we need to offset them in relation to the button. We can do this by first accessing the bounding rectangle with the getBoundingClientRect method and then using the received values by setting the ripple's top and left properties accordingly. A simple formula for that is example for the top, client y minus rect.top minus half of the ripple size, so in our case 200. Now do the same for the x coordinates and don't forget about the pixel unit at the end of the value. This should handle the positioning pretty well. Now we have to do the animation. For that we'll use simple CSS animation and an additional class name. So while we're here, let's handle setting the ripple active class to indicate the start of the animation. Now let's go back to our CSS file and at the top of it set up our animation. We only have to set a single keyframe at the end, so at 100%, well we set opacity to 0.3 for a nice fade effect and use transform scale to handle ripple sizing. Now only a few more adjustments are necessary. First we have to set transform scale to 0 for our ripple to finally disappear and handle our ripple active class which we're using from the JS. Here all we have to do is simply set all the CSS animation related properties, so animation name to ripple, duration to about 250 milliseconds and optionally the timing function to ease out. The last and most important property is the animation fill mode, which controls how the animation affects the element after and before its playback. we'll set it to both. Now our ripple shows up but doesn't disappear. To fix that, we have to handle mouse up, mouse out and touch end events with our pointer up function. Inside of it, we remove the ripple active class to stop and reset the animation. But we'll put everything within a set timeout callback for our ripple to not disappear immediately after the event. The timeout should be equal to the duration of the animation, so in our case 250. So as you can see, our button now works as expected. And with that, we've finished the tutorial. Again, all the links including the code are in the description. If you liked the video, consider leaving a like and a sub, checking out my blog and following me on Twitter, Facebook or Reddit. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.